Commander Veltar watched in horror as the massive Vortak warship tore through the Alliance battlecruiser like paper. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, casting shadows across his bridge as debris scattered in all directions. That was the seventh ship they had lost in the last hour, and the enemy showed no signs of slowing down. "Sir, the Etherian fleet is requesting permission to fall back," his communications officer reported, her voice shaking. The young officer had never seen a battle this brutal before. None of them had. "Denied," Veltar replied firmly, though his heart was breaking. "If we retreat now, New Harmony dies with us." Below them, the colony world of New Harmony spun slowly in space, its blue oceans and green continents home to 50 million beings from across the galaxy. Humans, Centauri, Drachmae, and dozens of other species had built lives together on this peaceful world. Children played in schools while their parents worked in the great cities. They had no idea that death was coming for them from the stars. The Vortak swarm had appeared 3 days ago, emerging from the dark space between systems like a nightmare made real. Their ships were ugly things, black metal covered in spikes and weapons. They moved in perfect formation, consuming everything in their path. Entire star systems had gone dark as the swarm passed through, leaving nothing but empty space where once there had been life. "Drachmae squadron reporting heavy losses," another officer called out. "Admiral Korth says his warriors will hold the line as long as possible." Veltar nodded grimly. The Drachmae were known throughout the galaxy for their courage. Their massive warriors stood 8 feet tall and feared nothing in battle. But even their legendary bravery was not enough against this enemy. On his tactical display he could see the battle unfolding in 3 dimensions. The Etherian ships danced through space like silver birds, their energy weapons painting beautiful but deadly light shows against the darkness. Their plasma cascades could melt through most armor in seconds, but the Vortak ships seemed to absorb the damage and keep coming. The crystalline fleet held the center formation, their commanders calculating every move with mathematical precision. Their ships were works of art, all smooth curves and elegant design. They fired in perfect synchronization, each shot placed exactly where it would do the most damage. But for every Vortak ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Korth," the communications officer announced. The holographic image of the Drachmae admiral appeared on the bridge. His fur was singed from battle damage and one of his 4 arms hung limp at his side. Behind him Veltar could see smoke and sparks from damaged systems. "My friend," Admiral Korth growled in his deep voice, "my ships are breaking apart. We have held them as long as we can, but they are too many. I am taking my remaining vessels on one final charge. Remember the Drachmae code, we die with honor or not at all." Before Veltar could respond, the transmission cut out. On the tactical display, he watched as the surviving Drachmae ships formed up and flew straight into the heart of the Vortak formation. The explosions that followed were beautiful and terrible, taking dozens of enemy ships with them into death. "The center line is collapsing," his tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Veltar could see it happening with his own eyes. The careful formations they had maintained for 3 days of fighting were falling apart like a house of cards. His flagship, the Star of Centauri, shuddered as enemy fire found their weakened shields. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge, and he could hear the sound of metal tearing somewhere deep in the ship's hull. "Damage report," he called out. "Shields down to 15%. We have hull breaches on decks 12 through 16. Engineering reports that we have maybe 30 minutes of fight left in us." 30 minutes. Veltar looked at the tactical display again. The Vortak had lost perhaps a quarter of their fleet, but they still outnumbered the Alliance forces 3 to 1. And more ships were arriving every hour, pouring out of hyperspace like an endless black tide. He thought about his family on Centauri Prime, safe in their home by the Crystal Sea. His daughter was only 8 years old, and she loved to watch the ships come and go from the orbital station. She always said she wanted to be a starship captain like her father when she grew up. Now she might never get that chance. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving surrender requests from the civilian transports around New Harmony. They want to know if they should try to evacuate." Veltar closed his eyes for a moment. There were thousands of civilian ships in orbit around New Harmony, cargo haulers, passenger liners, private yachts. They could maybe save a few 100,000 people, but the Vortak would hunt them down before they reached hyperspace. "Tell them to stay put," he said finally. "If they run, the Vortak will follow them. At least this way, some of them might survive if the enemy shows mercy." But even as he said it, he knew the Vortak had never shown mercy to anyone. The bridge shook again as more enemy fire struck their failing shields. Through the view screen he could see Vortak fighters swarming around them like angry insects. Their weapons were crude but effective, designed to tear ships apart rather than disable them. "Sir, we are being hailed by the Etherian flagship," his communications officer reported. The elegant face of Admiral Silneth appeared on screen. The Etherian's silver skin was pale with exhaustion, and her large eyes showed the strain of maintaining their energy weapons for so long. "Commander Veltar," she said in her musical voice, "our ships are failing. The energy matrices cannot handle much more strain. We must consider evacuation of the colony." "With what ships?" Veltar asked bitterly. "The Vortak will destroy anything that moves." As if to prove his point, a Vortak battleship emerged from behind New Harmony's largest moon, its weapons already charging. It was heading straight for the civilian orbital stations. Veltar made his decision. He opened a channel on all frequencies, broadcasting to every ship in the system. "This is Commander Veltar of the Alliance fleet. New Harmony is lost. Any ships receiving this transmission, stay away. Do not attempt rescue. Remember us." 3 hours had passed since Commander Veltar sent his final message into space. The battle around New Harmony had turned into a slow massacre. His ship was barely holding together, held up by emergency power and the desperate work of his engineering crew. Around him, the last few Alliance vessels fought like wounded animals, striking out at an enemy that seemed impossible to stop. The Vortak had stopped their wild attacks and were now moving in for the kill. Their black ships moved slowly through the debris field, hunting down survivors like predators playing with their prey. Every few minutes, another Alliance ship would explode in a ball of fire and metal. "Sir, we have lost contact with the Etherian flagship," his communications officer reported. Her voice was barely a whisper now. They had been fighting for so long that everyone was exhausted. Veltar nodded but said nothing. Through his view screen, he could see the burning wreckage of what had once been Admiral Silnetha's beautiful ship. The Etherians were all dead now, their elegant energy weapons silenced forever. His tactical officer was staring at his instruments with confusion. "Commander, I am picking up something strange on long-range sensors." "More Vortak ships?" Veltar asked tiredly. It did not matter anymore. They were already outnumbered 10 to 1. "No sir. These readings are different. Ships are approaching from hyperspace, but they are moving at impossible speeds. I have never seen signatures like this before." Veltar looked at the tactical display. Small dots were appearing at the edge of sensor range, moving toward them faster than any known ship could travel. The computer was trying to identify the vessel types, but kept showing error messages. "How many ships?" he asked. "Difficult to say, sir. At least 50, maybe more. They are using some kind of stealth technology that is interfering with our sensors. 50 ships would not be enough to stop the Vortak, but maybe they could buy time for some civilians to escape." Veltar opened a communication channel on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Veltar of the Alliance fleet. You are approaching a battle zone. The enemy force is overwhelming. Suggest you retreat to safety." For a long moment there was only static. Then a voice came through the speakers, speaking in perfect galactic standard but with an accent that none of them had ever heard before. "This is Captain Kim of the Human Colonial Marine Corps. We received your distress signal. Transmit all tactical data immediately." Veltar looked at his communications officer in surprise. "Human? Did he say human?" His tactical officer was already searching the ship's database. "No record of any species called human in our files, sir. And I have never heard of a colonial marine corps." "Captain Kim," Veltar replied, "I appreciate your willingness to help, but you should know that you are facing the Vortak swarm. They have destroyed 7 full battle fleets. Whatever ships you have, it will not be enough." "Understood," came the cold reply. "Transmitting tactical data now. We will handle the immediate threat. Keep your remaining ships clear of our operational zone." Before Veltar could ask what he meant by operational zone, the unknown ships began dropping out of hyperspace. What emerged from the swirling energy made everyone on the bridge stare in shock. These were not ships like anything in the Alliance fleet. Where Alliance vessels were smooth and beautiful, these newcomers were sharp and ugly. They looked like they had been built for only one purpose, to fight and kill. Every surface bristled with weapons. Thick armor plating covered their hulls. Even their shapes seemed aggressive, all angles and edges like the teeth of some metal predator. "Sir, we are being hailed by the lead vessel," his communications officer announced. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the face of Captain Kim. He appeared to be bipedal like many species in the galaxy, but there was something different about him. His skin was pale, and his eyes were a cold blue color that seemed to look right through a person. When he spoke, his voice was calm and controlled, but there was something in it that made Veltar think of winter storms and steel blades. "Commander Veltar, I am Captain Kim. We are uploading your tactical data now. Our analysis shows approximately 800 Vorthack vessels in this system. Is this correct?" "Yes, that sounds about right," Veltar replied, wondering how these humans could speak so calmly about such overwhelming odds. Captain Kim nodded as if 800 enemy ships was a normal thing to face in battle. "Understood. We will begin engagement in 30 seconds. I recommend you withdraw your remaining vessels to a safe distance. Captain Kim, with respect, you only have 50 ships. The Vorthack will destroy you in minutes." For the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed the human's face, but it was not a warm expression. It reminded Veltar of the way a hunter might smile when spotting prey. "Commander, you are thinking like the Alliance. We do not fight like the Alliance." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked confused and worried. "Sir, what should we do?" his tactical officer asked. Before Veltar could answer, his sensors officer called out in amazement. "Sir, you need to see this. The human ships they are changing." On the tactical display, they watched as the human fleet began to spread out in a pattern unlike anything they had ever seen. Instead of forming the neat battle lines that Alliance forces used, they scattered like a pack of wild animals surrounding prey. "They are not following any known combat doctrine," his tactical officer observed. "Their formation makes no sense." But as Veltar watched, he began to see that there was a pattern, just not one that any civilized species would use. The humans were not preparing for an honorable battle between warriors. They were preparing to hunt. The Vorthack had noticed the new arrivals and were turning to face this fresh threat. Their massive black ships began moving into attack formation, confident that these few newcomers would fall as easily as all the others. They were about to learn that humans fought very differently than the Alliance. The moment the human ships began their attack, Commander Veltar knew he was watching something that would change warfare forever. The humans did not charge forward in neat lines like the Drakmari warriors. They did not dance through space with elegant grace like the Etherians. Instead, they moved like a pack of hungry wolves that had found wounded prey. The first human fighter craft shot forward at incredible speed, heading straight for a massive Vorthack battleship. Veltar expected to see the small ship destroyed instantly by the enemy's heavy weapons. Instead, he watched in shock as the fighter pilot waited until the last possible second, then ejected from his craft just before impact. The small human ship smashed into the Vorthack vessel's bridge with tremendous force. The explosion tore through the enemy ship's command center, leaving it spinning helplessly in space. Meanwhile, the human pilot was already being picked up by another craft. Did he just sacrifice his ship on purpose? Veltar's tactical officer asked in amazement. Before anyone could answer, they saw more human fighters doing the same thing. One after another, they crashed into Vorthack ships, their pilots escaping at the last moment. It was like watching controlled suicide attacks, except the attackers kept surviving. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from one of the human vessels," his communications officer announced. On screen appeared a woman in strange armor, standing in what looked like the corridor of a damaged ship. Behind her, Veltar could see other humans in similar armor moving through smoke and flashing lights. "This is Sergeant Park of the Human Colonial Marines. We have boarded 3 enemy vessels. Beginning sweep and clear operations." The transmission switched to helmet camera footage, and what Veltar saw made his blood run cold. The human Marines were not simply fighting their way through the Vorthack ship. They were hunting. They moved through the corridors with deadly precision, checking every room, every hiding place. When they found enemy crew members, they did not try to capture them or force surrender. They simply killed them and moved on. "This is not how civilized beings fight wars," whispered his communications officer Lee. She was one of the few humans that Veltar had met before, a diplomat who worked with the Alliance. But these Marines were nothing like the peaceful humans he knew from the diplomatic corps. "They are not fighting to win," Veltar said quietly, unable to look away from the brutal footage. "They are fighting to exterminate." On the tactical display, he could see human boarding craft attaching to Vorthack ships like parasites. Within minutes, those enemy vessels would go dark as the Marines systematically eliminated every living thing aboard. No prisoners were taken. No mercy was shown. But the boarding actions were just the beginning. The main human fleet was doing something that made even less sense. Instead of attacking the Vorthack directly, they were using tractor beams to capture asteroids from a nearby asteroid field. "What are they doing?" his tactical officer wondered aloud. Captain Kim's voice came over the communication channel, speaking to his own ships. All vessels, prepare for kinetic bombardment. Target the enemy staging area behind the fourth moon. Veltar watched in fascination as human ships began accelerating the captured asteroids. But these were not normal asteroid impacts. The humans were using their ships' engines to push the rocks faster and faster, until they were moving at incredible speeds. "Sir, those asteroids are approaching significant fractions of light speed," his science officer reported. "The impact energy will be enormous." Through his view screen, Veltar could see the Vortak fleet gathering behind New Harmony's fourth moon, preparing for another attack wave. There were hundreds of enemy ships there, enough to finish off the remaining Alliance forces with ease. The first asteroid struck the moon's surface just as the Vortak fleet was launching. The explosion lit up space like a new sun being born. The moon itself cracked and began to break apart, sending massive chunks of rock flying in all directions. But that was nothing compared to what happened to the Vortak ships. The enemy fleet simply disappeared. One moment there were hundreds of black ships preparing to attack, and the next moment there was only expanding plasma and debris. The shockwave from the impact rolled across space, destroying everything within thousands of kilometers. "Impossible," breathed his tactical officer. "They just eliminated an entire fleet formation with rocks." More asteroids followed, each one targeted at different Vortak positions. The humans had turned simple space rocks into planet-killing weapons, and they were using them with terrifying accuracy. Enemy ships that had survived the attacks of 7 Alliance fleets were being erased from existence by what amounted to very fast-moving stones. Veltar had fought in many battles during his long career, but he had never seen destruction on this scale. The humans were not just defeating the Vortak, they were wiping them out completely. This was not war as civilized species understood it. This was extermination. On his sensors, he could see the remaining Vortak ships beginning to move away from New Harmony. At first he thought they were repositioning for another attack. Then he realized what he was seeing and his heart nearly stopped. The Vortak swarm, undefeated for centuries, was retreating. "Sir, the enemy fleet is breaking off," his tactical officer reported unnecessarily. "They are heading for hyperspace." But the humans were not content to let them escape. Veltar watched as human pursuit ships chased after the fleeing Vortak vessels, their weapons reaching out to destroy enemy ships even as they tried to jump to safety. Captain Kim's cold voice came over the communication channel again. "No survivors. No regrouping. Complete elimination of the threat." Lee, his communications officer, was staring at the tactical display with horror. "Commander, I have never seen humans fight like this. The ones I know from the diplomatic service are peaceful people." Veltar nodded grimly. "These are not diplomats, Lee. These are soldiers. And I think we have just learned why no one has ever heard of their species before." The hunt continued for 6 more hours. Commander Veltar watched from his damaged bridge as human ships chased down every single Vortak vessel trying to escape the system. There was no mercy in their pursuit. When enemy ships tried to surrender by shutting down their weapons and sending distress signals, the humans destroyed them anyway. "Sir, we are being invited to a joint command meeting aboard the human flagship," his communications officer Lee reported. Her voice was still shaky from everything they had witnessed. Veltar nodded. He needed to understand these humans better. His ship was barely able to move, but the humans sent a small transport to bring him and his senior officers to their vessel. The human ship was unlike anything he had ever seen inside. Where Alliance vessels had comfortable quarters and beautiful decorations, this ship was all business. The walls were metal gray, and everything was designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Armed Marines stood at every intersection, their weapons always ready. Captain Kim met them in a large room filled with tactical displays and communication equipment. Other human officers were there too: Colonel Choi, a stern-faced woman with scars on her hands, Major Han, a quiet man who watched everything with calculating eyes, and Lieutenant Yoon, barely more than a boy but with the same cold confidence as the others. "Commander Veltar," Captain Kim said without any formal greeting. "We need to coordinate the cleanup operation." "Cleanup operation?" Veltar asked. "Standard procedure after eliminating a hostile force," Colonel Choi explained. "We catalog all destroyed enemy vessels, analyze their technology, and secure strategic positions to prevent future incursions." On the main display screen, Veltar could see human ships moving through the debris field where the Vortak fleet had been destroyed. They were using powerful scanners to examine every piece of wreckage, collecting samples and data. "Captain Kim," Veltar said carefully, I noticed that some Vortac ships were trying to surrender. Why did your forces not accept their surrender? Kim's expression did not change at all. His cold blue eyes looked at Veltar as if the question was strange. Because surrender allows regrouping. Enemy forces that escape today become threats to civilian populations tomorrow. Complete elimination prevents future attacks. Major Han nodded in agreement. We learned this lesson long ago on Earth. An enemy that survives will return stronger. Better to end the threat permanently. The casual way they spoke about total extermination made Veltar feel cold inside. In all his years of military service, he had never heard Alliance officers talk about war like this. For them, battle was something terrible but necessary, conducted with honor and rules. For the humans, war seemed to be simply a problem to be solved through mathematics and violence. How many Vortac ships escaped the system? Lieutenant Yoon asked, checking his data pad. 0, Colonel Choi replied. All enemy vessels have been eliminated. Excellent. That matches our projections. Veltar stared at them. You killed them all? Every single ship. Of course, Kim said. Leaving survivors would have been strategically unsound. Through the view screen, Veltar could see civilian transports arriving from across the galaxy. Word had spread quickly that New Harmony was safe, and ships were coming to help with rescue operations and to bring supplies. As the first transport landed on the planet's surface, crowds of survivors came out to greet their rescuers. The humans had saved 50 million innocent lives. Children would grow up because of what these cold warriors had done. Families would be reunited. Entire species had been saved from extinction. But watching the systematic way the humans worked made Veltar deeply uncomfortable. They moved through the aftermath of battle like machines, calculating everything, measuring everything, planning for every possibility. Captain Kim, he said, your species is not in our databases. Where do you come from? For the first time, something like emotion showed in Kim's eyes. We come from a world called Earth. It is what your scientists would call a death world, a planet where everything tries to kill everything else. Colonel Choi continued the explanation. Humans evolved through constant warfare. We fought the environment, we fought other species, and we fought each other. For 10,000 years, survival meant being better at violence than anything else that wanted to live. War shaped our entire civilization, Major Han added. We learned that mercy toward enemies leads to the death of innocents. We learned that half measures lead to defeat. We learned that sometimes, to protect what you love, you must become something terrible. Lieutenant Yoon pulled up a display showing human military doctrine. Our strategic philosophy is simple. Overwhelming force applied with precision until the threat is completely eliminated. No survivors, no regrouping, no second chances. Veltar looked around the room at these human officers. They were not evil people, he could see that they genuinely wanted to protect innocent life. But their methods came from a mindset that was completely alien to everything the Alliance believed about civilized warfare. The Alliance fights with honor, he said quietly. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose, Kim replied. We cannot afford to lose because when we lose, civilians die. Through the communication system, they could hear reports from the rescue operations on New Harmony. Human medical teams were working alongside Alliance doctors to treat the wounded. Human engineers were helping to repair damaged infrastructure. Human supply ships were bringing food and medicine to the survivors. But Veltar could not forget the cold efficiency with which these same humans had hunted down and destroyed every single Vortac ship. They saved innocent life with the same calculating precision that they used to eliminate threats. Commander, Lee whispered to him, what kind of people are we dealing with? Veltar looked at Captain Kim, who was already planning fortifications to protect New Harmony from future attacks. The human was completely focused on his work, treating the defense of 50 million civilians like a mathematical problem to be solved. I think, Veltar said quietly, we have been saved by something more dangerous than what threatened us. 2 weeks after the Battle of New Harmony, Commander Veltar found himself sitting in the Alliance Emergency Council chambers on Centauri Prime. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from every member species, all trying to understand what had just happened to their galaxy. Captain Kim stood at the center of the chamber, his human uniform dark against the colorful robes and ceremonials of the Alliance delegates. He looked completely calm, as if speaking to the most powerful leaders in the galaxy was just another routine task. Honorable delegates, Kim began in his cold, precise voice, humanity offers the Alliance a simple choice. We can be formal allies working together for galactic peace. Or we can maintain neutral relations with mutual respect for each other's territories. The one thing we cannot allow is enmity between our species. The Etherian delegate, a tall being with silver skin, raised one graceful hand. Captain Kim, you speak as if we have no choice in this matter. Kim's blue eyes fixed on the delegate without any emotion showing. You have every choice, honored delegate. But you should understand the consequences of each option. High Chancellor Zarven of the Drakmari stood up, his massive frame towering over everyone else in the chamber. Are you threatening us, human? I am explaining reality, Kim replied calmly. We have seen what happens when aggressive species are allowed to grow unchecked. The Vorthak consumed dozens of worlds because no one was willing to stop them permanently. We will not allow that to happen again. The Chancellor's 4 arms crossed over his chest. And who gave you the right to decide galactic policy? For the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed Kim's face. The same thing that gives any species rights in this universe, the power to enforce our will. We come from Earth, a world where survival required constant warfare. We learned that peace is only maintained through the credible threat of overwhelming retaliation. Veltar watched the faces of the Alliance leaders as Kim spoke. They were afraid, he realized. For the first time in centuries, the Alliance was facing a species that was more powerful than they were, and that species had very different ideas about how the galaxy should be run. The days that followed the council meeting were strange and unsettling. Human ships began appearing in star systems across Alliance space, but they came bearing gifts rather than weapons. Advanced medical technology that could cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for generations. Agricultural systems that could feed entire planets. Defensive weapons that could protect worlds from any future invasion. But everyone understood the message behind the gifts. The humans were showing their power while making it clear that they preferred to use that power to help rather than to harm. Veltar had been assigned as the official liaison between Alliance Command and human colonial forces. It was a job that no one else wanted because it meant working closely with the humans every day. His new office was on a space station that orbited the ruins of the Vorthak fleet, a constant reminder of what human warfare could accomplish. His primary contact was Major Seo, a human woman who looked to be in her 30s but spoke with the authority of someone much older. Like all the human officers he had met, she was efficient and direct, wasting no time on small talk or pleasantries. Commander Veltar, she said during one of their regular meetings, we have received reports of pirate activity in the Outer Rim territories. 3 merchant ships have been attacked in the past week. The Alliance patrol fleet is already investigating, Veltar replied. We should have the situation under control within a month. Major Seo looked at him with those same cold human eyes that seemed to see everything. A month is too long. Innocent people are being killed while you investigate. We must follow proper procedures, Veltar explained. We need to identify the pirates, determine their base of operations, and plan a careful response that minimizes casualties. Your procedures allow criminals to continue harming civilians, Seo said flatly. We have a different approach. 2 days later, the pirate attack stopped completely. When Veltar asked what had happened, Major Seo simply said, the threat has been eliminated. He never found out exactly how the humans had solved the problem so quickly, and he was not sure he wanted to know. As the months passed, similar incidents happened throughout Alliance space. Any threat to civilian populations was dealt with swiftly and permanently by human forces. Pirates disappeared. Terrorist groups vanished overnight. Even corrupt planetary governments found themselves replaced with more honest leaders, though no one could prove that the humans were responsible. Your species fights with honor, Major Seo told him during one of their coordination meetings. Ours fights to win. The galaxy needs both perspectives, but survival requires our approach when facing existential threats. Veltar was beginning to understand what she meant. The Alliance way of fighting was noble and civilized, but it was also slow and sometimes ineffective. The human way was brutal and frightening, but it worked. Through his office window, he could see human construction ships building a new colony on what had once been a Vorthak staging area. The humans were claiming territory throughout the former enemy zones, establishing settlements and military bases with impressive speed. Are you conquering us? He asked Major Seo one day. She looked genuinely surprised by the question. No, Commander. We are protecting you. There is a difference. Is there? Major Seo was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the human ships patrolling the space around New Harmony. Perhaps not, she said finally. But we learned long ago that sometimes protection requires control. The final message came directly from Captain Kim himself, transmitted to every Alliance world simultaneously. His image appeared on screens across the galaxy, speaking in that same calm, cold voice that had become so familiar. "Citizens of the Alliance," he said, "the galaxy is under human protection now. We do not seek to rule you or control your daily lives. We simply ensure that no force will be allowed to threaten innocent people. Peace through superior firepower." Veltar realized that they had traded one fear for another. But at least their new guardians directed their violence outward, toward those who would harm the innocent.